And then I was out of the body again, and I'm floating through everything. And I was seeing hundreds of thousands of little tiny glimpses of what I understood at that time to be all experiences of life that I had lived or that I could live. And some of them looked like me, some of them didn't, but I knew that it was all me. Hi, my name is Lisa Everhart. I'm a motivational speaker and a spiritual life coach, and I have had a near-death experience that I'm wanting to talk on today. About 6 years ago, I was in a really dark place. I was very unhealthy. I was addicted to alcohol, drugs. I was suicidal tendencies, always in and out of the hospital. My alcoholism had gotten to the point where my liver was failing. I was coughing up blood whenever I would drink. It was a very dark story, my old story was. And I actually had my near-death experience through a attempt of suicide. And I took about 800 pills, a combination of just about everything I had in my home. Vicodin, muscle relaxers, sleeping pills, aspirin, and I also took poison packets. I wanted to make sure it was a sealed, done deal. And I did this about 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning on a Sunday morning. I knew that my boyfriend at the time was going to be gone at work for at least 10 hours. And so it was the prime time to be able to do this and for it to succeed. Um, I went into a dark void, almost like where it was just space. And I knew that I was there, but I couldn't see. I couldn't see my body. I was like felt floaty, and I don't know how long I was in this environment, but I do recall then seeing a bright light, and I could then see myself outside of my body and my body laying on my bed where I had previously taken the pills, and I had remembered what I had done, and I knew that this was my body and I was outside of it. I remember being carried out in a body bag, and this was about 8:30. It couldn't have been any earlier than 8:30 p.m. at night because that was around the time that my boyfriend got home. So that left me unattended within that void for about 12 hours before I was found. So I did remember being carried out in a body bag and being able to see me being put into an ambulance inside this bag. That is the last thing I remember before waking up in the hospital, where I woke up 2 to 3 times. And I'm just going to share what I saw within these times. The time frame is very confusing for me to understand because having a near-death experience, time in the third dimensional space and the fourth dimensional space are very different. So I remember waking up in the hospital and them asking me, Lisa Everhart, do you know why you're here? Do you know why you're here? And asking me questions like, what's the date? Things of that nature. And then I went under again. And when I went under, the hospital room no longer looked like a hospital room. It looked like a building, brick building. And I was on this bed, and I was attached to this monitor that had codes on it. And then there was another like tablet. One was like the size of a phone, one was the size of a tablet, and they both had coding on it. And one was attached to me through a cord. And I remember trying through all my effort to pull myself up out of this bed, out of this body. And then I was able to succeed in doing that. And I was floating. I wasn't in a body any longer. I was just floating. I couldn't see myself, but I went through this wall, and the hospital didn't look like the hospital. It was all brick. And I went through, and everything was very dim light. And I went through this sliding glass door, and I went out, and it was just all green grass everywhere. And there were these two trees. There was one to my right and one to my left, and they were exactly the same distance from each other, parallel to each other. And I went up the first tree. For some reason, I felt called to go up this tree. and I tried to float up it and I couldn't. And so I went over to the other tree, and as I started to excel up in ascension up this tree, it started to transform into kind of like a treehouse playground almost. And inside this tree was this old fashioned television, and it had that gray static going down it. And I remember just looking at it and just wondering, like trying to touch it and like, what is this and what does it mean? I was just still in a very confused state. And then I woke up the first time back into the hospital, and they were yelling my name, Lisa, Lisa, do you know why you're here? Do you know the date? And they're asking me all these questions again. And I just was looking around. I had tubes in my nose. I had IVs all over me. And then I started to fade out again, and my eyes started to close. And then I heard the nurses say, she's seizing, but there's no activity of it on the monitor. And then I went fully under again, and I was back where I saw the tablet and the phone and the coding on it. And this time I tried to look to see if I could understand what the coding on it was, but I couldn't. And it became very glary. And then I was out of the body again, and I was floating. And this time I went around through the door that was to my right. So I was going down this hallway, and I exited out the back. And I'm floating through everything. So I'm not walking. I'm actually going through building doors and walls. I made it back outside to where the tree was, where I was previously. And I went back up that tree that I was able to go up. And this time on the television that was there, the static was gone. And I was seeing hundreds of thousands of little tiny glimpses of what I understood at that time to be all experiences of life that I had lived or that I could live. And some of them looked like me, some of them didn't, but I knew that it was all me, because I was seeing on one screen, and these two were right next to each other, where I was laying dead in my bed, and to the right of it was me in the hospital attached to all kinds of different monitors. And so when I put my hand forward to try and touch it again, but there was no physical hand, but it was me moving my light orb, because that's what I was, towards this screen. I then sucked in, like I became like a vortex of rainbow, and I sucked into this scene where I was in the hospital. And so I felt it, where like I literally felt like a shift in me. And I then woke up again for the second time in the hospital, and my body was shaking when I was awakening. And then they were yelling again, and I heard them saying, she's seizing again, she's seizing again. And then my body went still, and I went back under. And when I went back under, I was once again in that brick building, and I went out towards the other hallway. It was a very large building, and I've looked and looked online to see if there's any buildings that resemble this building that I was seeing, because I'd never seen it before. And so I was going down this hallway, and I saw two girls, both alive. So this was very strange to me looking back at my experience. But one was a girl named Britney, and one was a girl named Stephanie. And at this time, why I saw them, I was unsure what it meant. I just kept going, and I made it back outside. And I had this red glow ball, like where I could see it in front of me. And I don't know how, if it was just part of me or if I was holding it, because I had no body. So it was just there, and I saw this red ball. It was like a neon red light, and I was floating. So I could see the light, and I'm floating. I'm going around, and I'm just looking around to see what there is. And I woke up again in the hospital. And this time I was actually able to speak. And I said, yes, I know I'm here. I took pills. And then a doctor came in, and when he started to talk to me, I fell back under. And this is when I woke up this time, I wasn't in a hospital bed. I woke up, and I felt like my body almost or whatever it was, consciousness body, um, almost split in two. And I was coming up and there was dirt falling off of me. And as the dirt was falling off of me, I was able to sit up, and there was three crosses, and they were gravestone crosses. There was one to my right, one to my left, and there was one in front of where I was waking up. And so when I got out of the grave and I saw the dirt just like falling down, I started to flow, or to glide over to this rock. It was a huge rock. And for some reason, I just felt called to go over and see what it was. And so I tried putting my force forward, and then it opened up and it became a cave. And so when it opened up and became a cave, I went inside the cave, and I was seeing shattered pieces of skull everywhere. And I wasn't sure if it was my own or if it was someone else's or what. I was still very confused to everything that was going on and what I was experiencing. But as I went forward, I was then going down almost these stone steps, and I continued to see little pieces of skull everywhere. And then I felt heat. And as I felt heat, everything around me was like a reflection. And when I was looking around to the sides of me, this reflection, I saw a fiery serpent. And it appeared that was my reflection. And so when I was seeing this, I was just very confused. I was trying to like lift up to see if I like to look at myself. And so as I'm standing there, unaware if I'm looking at a serpent or if I'm looking at my reflection and I'm the serpent. So I'm looking and looking, and then it morphs, and there's this black tar that just dissipates, and it went all over my body. I didn't see my body, but that was my impression. It went all over me. It consumed me. So I knew it had consumed me. And after that, I was holding a baby in an incubator. And it was this weird pod, and I'd never seen anything like it, but it was floating there. And there was a cord, like the cord that was attached, through this whole experience, I'm attached to a cord. And so this baby also had a cord, and I'm holding it, but it's floating. So was another, that's how I knew that I had no body, because I could not see hands or anything of that sort. I could just see the blackness. And then I woke up again in the hospital room, and they were asking me, Lisa, do you know why you're here? And I said, yes. And I was awake from that point forward. I didn't fall back under again. I didn't see anything else. But because I did take my own life, I was sent to a rehabilitation facility for mental reviewing, to make sure that I was able to go home, and to run some tests, because my liver going into that was already very horrible, and consuming all the pills and everything. So they had me on a very close review, watching me. So while I was at the new facility, they actually took me over in an ambulance to this other facility. I don't, so it gets confusing for me, time, but I started to have all of these visions that lasted for about 2 years and 9 months, where I was having these visions, and they felt so real, like just as real as me sitting here in this chair right now. And the very first one that I had was a man in a white robe, and like a very bright purple, something on his torso, like a not a sash, but like almost like a karate robe, like where they come across like that. And it was bright purple. I just remember how purple it was, and his eyes were this olive green, and his hair was really, really wavy, and he had like this illuminated glow to him. And he came into my room where I was at on the bed, and we flew out of the universe, broke through the room, broke through the universe. I could feel the clouds on my face, and I could feel the moisture. We went up further where I could actually see Earth underneath me. And then we went further up, and we're like in this vortex, just light speed, and I could actually feel it within my body. And in this, I had a body. And so going up into the sun, we broke through the atmosphere of the sun. I felt the heat on my face. And when we entered into the sun, I saw all these little cliff mountain tops everywhere, and there's water flowing all underneath it. And it was just the most gorgeous place I've ever seen. Everything was just so bright and filled with colors that, I mean, colors here, the brightest of colors, it doesn't even touch to the colors that were there. And everything was marble and granite and emerald and silver and gold. And it was just beautiful, beautiful place. And so up on this cliff, this mountaintop, we flew into there. And what was shown to me is still a little confusing, but there was a young child, two young boys, two young children sitting side by side, and their eyes are very glazed over, and they're looking at these screens, and what was playing on one screen was playing on the other screen, and vice versa. But that is what stood out to me, and that was what I was shown, the only thing that I was shown. And then I was told, but no one speaks there. So I heard it, and it says, you are a messenger, you are to share. And then I just felt like this loving embrace, this warmth of just the most amazing feeling ever that one could even hope to feel. And it just consumes me. And I was hugging this being who brought me there. And as I hugged, I felt like a union, because I no longer saw me. I no longer saw my body. And after that, I woke up returned back into my bed. That was the first vision that I had. And many followed after that, that were similar, but different as well. I've had many, many, many visions, and too many to name today. But I came back from that experience and about 4 months. It was very rocky. I knew I'd experienced something very beautiful and something very confusing at the same time. So little by little, there was something inside of me telling me, hey, do this. Hey, try this. And so all of a sudden, I felt compelled to write myself love notes. Sounds a little silly, but for some reason, I felt like this was what I needed to do. So I started writing myself love notes, saying how wonderful I love you, you're beautiful, you're kind, you're peaceful, all these things. And it helped me. It helped with my depression. It helped me draw me out of that. And then about 4 months after everything had happened, I just knew thoughts are creating my reality. And I had never read a self-development book. I had never heard of anything on YouTube. I'd never even really went on YouTube or anything like that. So I was very closed-minded when it came to anything outside of what my 3D world experience was, my environment. So when this idea came to me, I questioned it a lot. And so I went on, and I actually found other people who believed this. I'm like, okay, well, that's strange. Like this, I never saw it on the outside. It wasn't told to me on the outside. So I took that as confirmation, like, okay, well, there's something to this. So I started applying it. I started guarding my thoughts more and really paying attention to what it was I was thinking. And then another little piece of information came into me. And throughout this time, I was spending a lot of time alone, where I would just sit and ponder on this experience I had because I really wanted to make sense of it. I know that something special happened to me, and I wanted to make sure that I was doing what I needed to do because I was told I was a messenger and I didn't understand. I was like, me? Like, I have a horrible past. Like, what could I ever do to really help anybody? Like, I'm in a horrible spot myself. But doing these things and listening to this inner voice that was guiding me, I started seeing my physical being changing. My liver was restoring. Kidney issues that I had my entire life since I was a little girl, always in and out of the hospital with kidney stones. I hadn't had one in a really long time. I was beginning to feel happier. I was really stepping into a new version of me with just listening to this inner voice guide me. And so I did come across, I would type in for so many nights my experience just to see if anyone else had anything similar to this experience. And I came across about 3 years after my experience and when my visions had stopped, and I found Neville Goddard's work. I don't know if anyone is familiar with him, but when I found his work, and I wrote down a list to share with everyone today, these lectures that I found that really line up with so much of what I experienced that it just blew my mind. The heavenly vision, the shaping of the unbegotten, the serpent Jesus Christ, the conception 1968, the pruning shears of revision, and the resurrection. I found these lectures, and when I first came to them, I was just like, I was raised Christian. That's where I come from. And my parents were they were pastors and on the board, very involved in our church as me growing up. I went to Christian school. So I had one way of thinking, a very closed-minded way of thinking. And there was just no denying these lectures and these books because I truly believe that I experienced everything that I read in these lectures of this man who almost 100 years ago was having these experiences. And it was just a very wonderful thing when I found the work because I really thought I was going crazy and that I had messed up my mind and that I was just feeling very lost. That why did this happen? What can I take away from it? And when I found his work, it was just like a security blanket of comfort. And I started applying. I started using my mind for good. I started believing better things of myself. I started really saying affirmations. I started meditating. I started doing breath work. I started all these things was part of my journey. And it was a journey that, yes, it had its dark moments still. It was in and out in the beginning. But once I hit that sweet spot of just really knowing I do have purpose, my story has purpose, something did happen, and that, death that everyone fears, I'm I don't want to like come off like conceited or anything, but on a spiritual level, I really feel, conquering death. Like I know that I died. I saw it. I saw it right next to each other. One version of life where I died, one version of life where I live. And my mind can't really understand of what exactly to make logical sense of it. But I know on a spiritual sense that I went on to a different timeline to finish out what I'm here to do because there is no death in this world. That is my personal belief, just because of what I experienced, that if I have to stay true to my experience, and I just don't believe that death is an ending. I believe death is a beginning to a new life until we are done doing our work that we're here to do. And to actually touch on how it was the first few months coming back into life from that experience, I was actually having dreams of my old life, of that version of me that did die. I was seeing my family mourning me. I was seeing loved ones crying and burying me in the ground. And when I started to really step into this new identity of life, those dreams subsided, and I really I was more tuned into the reality that I'm now living. But that was a proof for me that there was two parallel versions of life being played out. And it was very hard for me to wrap my mind around at first. It really was. But through the years, um, I mean, the proof is in my experience, because I'm a completely changed person. It's like I stepped into a new version of me, because I did. My liver's healed, my kidneys are healed. I lost over 100 pounds at doing just being and choosing happy thoughts and choosing love and serving in any chance I get, and just loving people. And doing this, I really believe that's what healed me. Using my imagination for good, imagining good things for people, imagining good things for myself. This was my healing. This was the new me. And if you could see where I was and who I was to who I am today, I mean, it's just mind blowing. It's just, I'm unrecognizable. Like it's to that point, to that extent. I don't even look like the old pictures of Lisa. It's like looking at a stranger. So that's my story. That's my experience. I hope that it reaches someone who needs to hear it. I am on YouTube at Lisa Everhart, Account for Your Ability. I'm also have a private group, Account for Your Ability, on Facebook. My main page is Lisa Everhart. You can find me on Facebook there. I'm on Instagram through The Awareness Shift, and I do have a website called theawarenessShift.com.